Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times said this film got him in touch all over again with how good it feels to work at the top of your form on a story you believe in on deadline. Rita Kempley of the Washington Post says that it perfectly captures the hubbub of the nation's newsrooms, and she should know. And Letterboxd user Noah Giddle says, I initially had this pegged for a 4.5-star review, but as I kept trying to identify its flaws, I couldn't come up with one, so 5 stars it is. On this episode of Ruined Childhoods, we decide the fate of The Paper.
Sequel. Reboot. Which one will it be? It's the Ruined Childhoods podcast.
Greetings, Starfighters, and welcome to Ruined Childhoods.
Hey, Dan. How you doing?
Fantastic, John. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. We do record mostly on Friday nights, so I feel like for a lot of people, Friday nights are a night of, getting to relax a little bit and letting the week melt away. But I have a 3.5-year-old. You have a 6-year-old. I feel like in a lot of ways it means this start to a very stressful couple of days.
Oh, it's just, weekends are a combination of getting done all the work that didn't get done during the week and figuring out what to do with the 6-year-old.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's it. It's usually I spend most of my Saturdays the way I'm spending right now, which is the way I spend most of my week.
In that same room, talking at a screen.
Talking to someone at a screen, most likely referencing movies that very few people get. So,
do you get to talk about The Paper with them? I feel like that would be an interesting one to explore with your students.
The Paper would be a great movie to watch with students. Now, since I teach 9th grade, I teach 9th grade language arts. It's something that I would potentially do if I was teaching a journalism class. I would look at it, but there's some cool stuff. There's some great stuff in The Paper just about writing. Like this week I was talking about word choice with my students, and it just worked perfectly with all the different little scenes where in The Paper, and I know we're again putting the cart before the horse here, but
when they're kind of going back and forth about headlines and stuff, and
with Jeffrey Owens.
With Jeffrey Owens, yeah.
Who's
kind of the headline guy. He's like he's the designer. He designs
He does the headlines, and I think he does, or who is it who's the editor for Words? Oh, Clint Howard.
Clint Howard, right.
Clint Howard is the one who's always asking for what's
a word
another
for
word?
Blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So before we dive into that, we should talk about this Sister Act 3 news.
Yeah. So just for the uninitiated, those who might be joining us for the first time. So first of all, this podcast is all about, welcome. Thank you. Buy a t-shirt. But this podcast is all about revisiting old movies, and they can be cult classics. They could be straight up classics. They could just be hits from previous years, movies that got slept on. Yeah, like weird fun ones that only John and I watched in our household that weren't
whatever got stuck in the VCR.
Whatever got stuck in the VCR. Yeah. So we're not just going back and revisiting those movies. We're talking about what if there's a new life for them, if let's say Disney Plus decides after listening to an episode of an awesome podcast that there is an audience for Sister Act 3 and there is a venue for it,
right?
It comes to be. It comes to pass.
Yeah. Now, Dan, I don't know if you saw a different article than I did, but I noticed that you posted something, I think, on our social media, on our Instagram, that did it actually have the words "old habits die hard" in it, or did you do that? No, it was actually
that was
authentic.
no, that was in there. That's exactly what I was thinking. I was like,
feels like somebody has to be listening who's in any way involved with that.
and
It's just
listen,
too weird of a coincidence.
if you're listening and you're sitting there like, oh no, I got caught. This is not a bad thing.
No. Let us know. We'd love to know.
Email us. If you have taken any of our, if you are Hollywood and you have taken any of our ideas, please just shoot us an email at ruinedchildhoodspod@gmail.com.
Yeah.
Let us in on it. We're probably not going to ask for money.
Maybe we'll ask you to buy a t-shirt.
We would ask you to
Or
buy.
they're not just t-shirts. You can get them on tote bags, notebooks,
You
mugs.
could get a mask. You could get a mask.
Get a face mask for some
You
of
could
our
get
designs.
a face mask with the silhouette of Mr. Jesse Plemons.
Is
on
that
it.
one available as a face mask? I can't remember what
I am
toggles I switched on.
I am fairly certain it is.
Well,
but
Sister Act 3 on Disney Plus, that's so exciting. I'm excited about it.
It's happening. Tyler Perry's involved, which I think is the right way to go.
Makes a lot of sense.
I'm excited. Well, it's like Tyler Perry makes stuff happen. Tyler Perry's a hit machine, and I think and Tyler Perry, he's also worked with Whoopi. So
right. Mm-hmm.
Now I don't know if he is directing this. We don't know who is
says
directing.
Producing. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, co-producing.
Yeah,
but that's exciting. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see what happens.
Will
Harvey Keitel come back?
That's a great question. So we've got a lot of news going on with Disney Plus. They just announced a whole ton of stuff. I'm not even going to go mentioning any of that because there's just too much to talk about, aside from Sister Act 3, of course. So what I did want to mention is I did see an article on Slash Film about they are again rebooting Green Hornet. And Dan, did you see was it 2011, the Green Hornet with Seth Rogen?
I think so,
Christoph Waltz.
I think it was 2011. I saw it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really liked it. I thought it was a lot of fun. I love Michel Gondry, so I might just be prone to enjoying anything that he does. And Seth Rogen is fun, and Christoph Waltz is a great villain. So how could it be that bad?
I remember it being fun.
Yeah. And this new reboot, do you know who's writing it?
No, I don't.
A little guy named David Koepp, who wrote a little movie called The Paper.
The Paper. Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
So David Koepp also wrote Jurassic Park. Tons of amazing. Like if you look at his filmography, you'll be like, oh, I know literally all of these movies.
Yeah.
So
big hit maker, especially like 90s.
Yeah, let me go down the list a little bit.
Yeah.
So we have Toy Soldiers, Death Becomes Her, Jurassic Park, Carlito's Way, The Paper, The Shadow, Mission Impossible, Lost World, Jurassic Park, Snake Eyes, Stir of Echoes, Panic Room, Spider-Man, the 2002 Spider-Man.
That's right, yeah.
War of the Worlds, Zathura, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Okay. Ghost Town, Angels and Demons, Premium Rush, Jack Ryan, Shadow Recruit. He directed but did not write Mordecai. The Mummy. So like, dude just did a ton of stuff.
He's busy.
And he wrote this one with his brother, Stephen.
Yeah, that's right. Who was a journalist.
Editor-in-chief of Time, I think.
I think so, yeah. Yeah. But yeah, so David Koepp, awesome. Yeah, that's great. He's working on the Green Hornet.
Yeah. So I'm excited about it. I have to say, Dan, I watched The Paper a few months ago, and I was so excited to just watch it again. And I have a feeling that I'm going to watch this movie maybe once a year until the day I die. It's just, it has to be in like my top 10 movies, maybe even 5.
Wow. Okay. Before we get into The Paper, I do have one more thing.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
For Grumpy Old Men. No, that's okay. Yeah. We were talking about our, possibilities for Grumpy Old Men. I thought to myself, well, why wouldn't this work as a musical? Especially if you, in crafting that musical, kind of combined Grumpy Old Men and Grumpier Old Men, so that you have the Anne Margaret character and the Sophia Loren character, and you have those stories, and you've got that whole arc for the Burgess Meredith character. And I feel like it would set up a lot of great moments for songs, both between John and Max, and between the Jacob and Melanie, the Daryl Hannah and Kevin Pollak characters. You could see them involved, but you also have all these great other characters. Like imagine Anne Margaret,
Chuck.
like Chuck. Yeah, I mean, you could add spaghetti rigetti.
Spaghetti rigetti.
Spaghetti rigetti. Why not bring in spaghetti rigetti? Right.
Well, also you also have the setting Slippery's Tavern. Use that more. I want to see more Slippery's.
Well, you've got Slippery's, you've got the bait shop,
right?
Like the ice fishing shack. I think it could really work well. I mean, imagine the curtain coming up on that like little ice shack village. In the first one. And I mean, I don't know who you would get to be in it, but I mean, at this point, is it far-fetched to say like, I don't know, maybe Nathan Lane?
Yeah, right.
Nathan Lane and Matthew Broderick, forget it. They're the grumpy old men now.
Yeah, right. Or Nathan Lane and Mark Lynn Baker, if you really want to go there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You could. Yeah. But yeah, so I was thinking about that and thinking, if I was maybe of all things, like Grumpy Old Men could actually make a really sweet musical.
I totally agree.
And that's all I have to say about that.
And now let's talk about the paper. So Dan, do you know the story about how like the paper actually came about, the partnership between David Koepp and Ron Howard?
I don't know.
Okay, so there's way more to the story than what I'm about to tell you, because there's a lot going on with Imagine Entertainment, which was actually, this movie actually exists because of a reboot. Imagine Entertainment, the production company that, features Ron Howard and Brian Grazer at the head, they were getting too tied up in like pumping out all of these like big movies that were kind of missing a little bit. They were not like, I don't know, performing as well. And Ron Howard and Brian Grazer wanted to kind of scale it back and do more like simple movies, like things like The Paper. And there was this whole thing with, they had to basically pay out all the investors, and there were a bunch of lawsuits and stuff. And eventually they ended up getting back control of Imagine Entertainment so that they could really reformat the way that it worked out. And Ron Howard was really wanting to do a movie that took place in a newsroom for a newspaper and focus on that world a little bit. And he took a meeting with David Koepp as a potential writer for, I don't even know if it was for this specific project. And David Koepp was kind of just singing Ron Howard's praises about parenthood, and was just like gushing about parenthood. And Ron Howard was just like, all right, okay, I like this guy. And, instead of Ron Howard telling him, I want to do a movie about a newspaper newsroom, he was kind of just so like laid back and relaxed. He was just like, so what are you working on? Like, what kind of projects do you have going on? And he was like, well, I am writing something with my brother about a newspaper newsroom and all the things that go on in the day in the life of a newspaper. And Ron Howard was just like, oh my God, this is perfect. And I think that they instantly were just like, all right, let's do this. And so it came about that way.
So that's awesome. And it's fascinating because I've always felt that this movie is like a companion piece to Parenthood. I guess, especially in the oeuvre of Ron Howard, in his work, I felt like, Parenthood, that ensemble comedy that really deftly handled a wide range of characters, kept the stories straight, kept the audience engaged, and provided humor, but also some actual meaning. I felt The Paper really was Ron Howard's only other movie, definitely at that time and possibly since, that captured that same energy of a really just strong ensemble. I guess the common bond being Jason Robards, although he pops up. But I loved this movie. I loved it from the first time I saw it at the Cranford Twin, spring 1994.
Okay.
I loved it. Yeah, I just remember loving it. I loved that feeling, the dialogue, the fast-paced dialogue, that feeling that you get in that newsroom.
Well, I think that newsrooms, especially like newspaper newsrooms pre-internet, are just so fascinating. And Jason Robards, All the President's Men, like you think about the movies like that. And even recently with The Post getting back into, the Washington Post newsroom at that time. And it's exciting. There's a lot. It's an organism. It's got its own like ecosystem going on in there. It's exciting.
And you know what, actually, I'm sorry, because I'm about to jump into like things that I really appreciate about it. And I imagine that you would want to get to a synopsis before I start singing the praises of the paper.
Dan, I want to get into about 6 synopses.
There's quite
because I wrote a synopsis for each of the main characters.
Oh, geez. Wow. All right. I'm going to unmute. I'm going to go take a walk.
So I really felt like the best way, because, okay, you can do a synopsis that's so basic, which is just like, this movie takes place over the course of 24 hours at a newspaper, and it's just like in order to really understand this movie, you have to see it from everybody's different perspectives going into it. At the core of the movie is Henry Hackett. So that's Michael Keaton's character. I am going, the movie's through his eyes mostly. So, you ready?
Go for it.
Henry Hackett is the Metro editor for the New York Sun, a tabloid newspaper that's known for over-the-top headlines and tales of celebrity hookups. But when Henry wakes up one morning and discovers that all of the big papers covered a huge story about 2 men in Williamsburg shot to death in their car with Whitey spray painted on the side, and the Sun featured a nothing story about parking tickets. Heading into work with a chip on his shoulder about good journalism, Henry has a little secret. He has an interview at the Sentinel, a big-time newspaper with all the bells and whistles. As the day rolls on and Henry is several Coca-Colas deep, 2 young black kids who are seen at the shot-up car are taken into custody. But one of Henry's columnist colleagues overhears on the police scanner that it's all for show, and the police don't think these kids really did it. Henry's determined to get the story right and argues with his managing editor to get the real story, rather than printing the headline "Gotcha" on a story that might be inaccurate. They strike up a deal. If they can get a photograph at the 7 p.m. perp walk, they run Gotcha. If not, they run a front page story about a derailed train. Henry sends their most junior photographer to get the photo, knowing that it's unlikely that she will get anything at all. At Henry's interview at the Sentinel, he's essentially handed a cushy new job, but Henry can't stop thinking about the story about these 2 kids who were arrested. He tricks the Sentinel's editor to turn his back, and he catches a glimpse at his notepad, giving him a solid lead to really cracking the story. Itching to do some investigative reporting, Henry's wife Martha, who's 8.5 months pregnant and on maternity leave, finds out for Henry that the men who were killed were investment bankers who lost $8 million for a local organized crime unit. The only thing that Henry needs now is a quote from the police confirming that these 2 kids are innocent, but he doesn't have time because he promised Martha that he would meet her for dinner with her parents. But he can't let the story go. He leaves abruptly and goes with McDougal, the columnist, to the police precinct. They manage to get a quote out of one of the cops saying they didn't do it. Henry rushes back to the Sun and discovers that the paper is already running Gotcha, since the rookie photographer lucked into a miracle shot of the 2 kids. Doing her best to cut costs, the managing editors still made them run the story, even though they had the truth in their pockets. Henry refused to get the story wrong, while they had the right information, and does everything he can to stop the presses, and even gets into a brawl with the managing editor, who ends up winning. Defeated, Henry heads home, only to find an ambulance outside. Martha began to hemorrhage and was in danger of losing the baby and possibly her own life. After a long night of waiting, Henry gets to meet his new baby and comfort his wife. That's when he sees the new edition of The Sun with the headline, "They didn't do it," on the front page. I know there's a lot missing, but hopefully the blanks will be filled in by the rest of these.
Oh, the rest of them. And sorry, just to point out, to make things even worse and more awkward, Henry and Martha are having dinner with his parents.
Oh, is it his parents? I thought it was her parents.
It's his parents, which is what makes it even more awkward when he like shows up for 2 minutes and then leaves.
You know, I totally blanked on that.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I will have to edit my synopsis from Martha's perspective.
Oh, yeah, because it's a lot different there.
Well, why don't I do that one next?
All right.
Marty Hackett, is a damn good investigative journalist. She has a ton of connections and a way of getting people to talk, but that's all on hold while she's on maternity leave, currently 8.5 months pregnant with Henry's baby. While grabbing lunch with an old friend, who is already a mother, she realizes that her idea that she would come back to work and be a respected journalist again is probably not going to work out. At least not unless Henry gets a job at the Sentinel so they can afford to support their child and maybe even have more time to spend at home. Realizing that she has a chance to get a taste of the action once she's at the Sun's office, she jumps at the opportunity to follow up on a lead: financial information for 2 investment bankers who were recently killed. All that's left for her is to get Henry to meet her for dinner with his parents, who drove 2 hours to get into the city. After he is late to dinner, Henry confesses that he isn't getting the Sentinel job and that he has to go finish his story. Henry and Martha get into a huge fight, and Henry chooses his job over his family, which only confirms Martha's fears about parenthood and her chances of having a career ever again. After she gets home, she collapses, having hemorrhaged. She calls 911 and an ambulance takes her to the hospital, the doctors all the while saying scary things. Henry does happen to catch her as she's heading to the hospital, but he has to wait as they operate. They manage to save Martha and the baby, who's very healthy. In the morning, Henry apologizes, but Martha lets him off the hook given the significance of such a harrowing night. That one doesn't give you too much more information, but just wait until you hear this one about Alicia Clark.
Oh, yes.
So this is Glenn Close's character. Alicia Clark is the managing editor of the New York Sun, a tabloid newspaper that's known for over-the-top headlines and hot takes on penile implants. Having come from the fast-paced world of reporting, Alicia's journalistic integrity has taken a nosedive now that her job is more about getting the paper to print on time. All the while, she is trying her best to get a raise from the Sun's owner and having an affair with Carl, one of the reporters. Having a constant battle with Henry, she becomes jealous of his interview at the Sentinel, which only increases their already existing rivalry. On this particular day, she's pushing for a front-page feature on a minor train derailment simply because one person was maimed and they have a photo of it. Trying to compromise with Henry, she agrees to run a story on the 2 black kids who were arrested for the murder of the 2 white businessmen in Williamsburg, as long as they get a good photo. But since that's not enough for Henry, who wants to prove that these kids didn't commit the crime, she gives him an extension to go to print, which will cost them tens of thousands of dollars in union driver fees. But he can only run the story if he gets a quote from a cop saying that the kids didn't do it. When Henry finally gets it, it's already too late and Alicia started running the story that the kids did do it, with the headline, "Gotcha." She and Henry get into a fight that she ultimately wins. Henry reminds her that she used to have journalistic integrity after she wins the fight. Having won the battle, she still feels defeated. She is invited to the bar that the Sun staff goes to, except she had always been left out. After a talk with one of the columnists, McDougal, Alicia realizes that she was wrong to run the incomplete story and finds a payphone to call the presses to run the other plate. Meanwhile, a brawl breaks out in the bar and a gun fires. The bullet goes through the wall and hits Alicia in the leg. She's rushed to the hospital, but never was able to get through to the press room to finish the order. She refuses to sign the release to remove the bullet at the hospital until she can use a phone and right her wrong. Which is awesome, and I love it.
It's magnificent. I love, if I can just comment for a moment on Glenn Close's performance.
Oh, totally.
So wonderfully nuanced. I mean, like, it's Glenn Close. We're not surprised. She gave a great performance, but that moment after she gets shot and she's just, the bullet came out of the wall.
Yeah, a bullet came out of the wall.
A bullet came out of the wall. Like, she's just so confused. I love that moment for her. It's so great.
For me, this is maybe her best performance. For me. Just, for, my opinion.
Yeah.
And it should also be noted that her character was originally written as a man, I think named Alan. And when it was decided to change it to a woman and change the name to Alicia, I don't think they changed any of the dialogue, with the exception maybe of the one, off conversation she's having about being taken to the dinner that she goes to that night. Aside from that, I think every single line was kept the same, which is awesome.
Still has the affair, but is having the affair, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. Who knows?
With Carla.
With Carla. Yeah. Or with Carla. I don't know. But
Carmen. There we go. Carmen.
Yeah.
That's a character in it.
Although there is Carmen. She's the one who, yeah.
She's the reporter who is trying to get into the police precinct.
Yeah. She's great. But oh man, there was something else I wanted that I was thinking about Glenn Close and her performance in this, but like the difference, one thing that's so wonderful about that change is that this newsroom, even though there are women who work there, it's still very much a boys' club.
Sure.
And there's a lot of those really just like ribald blue jokes that they're making, especially Duvall. And
yeah, we'll get to him in a minute.
You see her discomfort in moments. You also see her trying to play along.
Yeah.
But you see that discomfort.
One of the moments that I also really like is, when they're having those, staff meetings, they think they have like 2 each day. There's the one like older woman who's going through stories, and she was like, Henry, you'll find this one interesting. The whale in Ukraine had triplets, and he was like, she told me she was on the pill. Like, yeah, those scenes, they feel so natural to me. Their exchanges feel so good. And, it's true. In 94, I'm sure that a lot of these newsrooms felt that way, with a lot of the like blue humor coming from like all the male colleagues. And I mean, not to say that
not only the male colleagues.
Well, yeah, but not to say that the women in this movie weren't, they were definitely respected. And there was even the point when Henry and Alicia are having the fight where, she like hits him, but anytime he like accidentally knocks her over, he feels so bad. And like, you can tell that he's trying not to get into a fight with her, but it keeps on kind of happening accidentally.
Well, she plays it up too.
She totally does. That's awesome.
It's so great. And I'm sorry, while we're talking about that scene, I know we're just going a little bit out of order here, but I had to point out, I had a couple of points when I was watching it where I made IMDb trivia notes.
Okay.
And one of those was during that scene, because in this scene, Michael Keaton's character, Henry, gets to say, "Stop the presses," which is what Jack Nicholson says.
Yeah. So what I love about that, and that moment is so great, because you know that you want him to say, "Stop the presses." And then McDougal, Randy Quaid's character, is like, "You're not going to say it? You got to say it."
Totally calling it out. Yeah. Love it.
So let's talk about McDougal.
Let's.
McDougal is a columnist for the New York Sun, a tabloid newspaper that's known for over-the-top headlines in any story worldwide, as long as someone from New York was in any way involved. He just released a story about corruption at the parking enforcement office, pinning the blame on a guy named Marion Sandusky. Paranoid that Sandusky is after him, McDougal hides out at the Sun's office. On this particular day, McDougal is crashing on the couch in Henry's office, hearing nothing but random conversations and the police scanner. When a bunch of people are hollering in Henry's office, McDougal is woken and gets everyone's attention by firing a gun into a stack of newspapers. After the room clears, McDougal tells Henry that he heard some cops on the police scanner talking about how the 2 black teens who were arrested for the murder of 2 white businessmen in Williamsburg weren't guilty. Having followed up on this lead, Henry returns in need of McDougal's help. Insisting that he's just a columnist, McDougal is reluctant, but Henry convinces him to pitch in. They head to the police station and corner a cop who's worked with McDougal in the past. Henry gets him to finally admit anonymously, but on the record, that these kids didn't do it. Henry and McDougal rush back to the office as McDougal writes and writes and writes. They finish the article just as they notice that the presses have started running. McDougal and Henry rush down and try to stop the press so they can switch the plates. After Henry and the managing editor, Alicia, get into a brawl, which Alicia wins, McDougal leaves defeated. When he sees that his car is getting towed for being double parked, Alicia offers to give him a ride to the bar. McDougal explains to Alicia over a drink that journalistic integrity is all they have, thus his disappointment. Alicia is convinced to right her wrong and goes off to a payphone. Meanwhile, Sandusky, who has been drinking at the bar with the Sun's editor-in-chief, spots McDougal and the two get into a huge fight. When McDougal's gun slides down the floor, Sandusky grabs it and swings it around a bit. It accidentally goes off and shoots a hole in the wall, hitting Alicia in the leg.
The fight that he has with Sandusky.
Oh, it's
talk about believability.
So yeah.
The part when you have, because, all right, we see these.
So Sandusky is played by Jason Alexander. So
Yeah.
first of all, you know that looking at Jason Alexander and Randy Quaid, it's, you know, could you find people who look that much more different other than if you're watching Twins?
So this fight is absolutely ridiculous, but I feel like this fight actually kind of looks the way that a fight, especially between two people who don't fight. Look, they're on the floor kicking at each other, and I was just like, that's hilarious. That's what would happen.
Totally.
Sorry.
Yeah,
So,
and I mean, I'll also say this. I feel like Randy Quaid's performance in this might be one of my favorite of his performances.
What do you want me to say? You want me to say good job? You want me to say you struck a blow for journalistic integrity today? I can't do it. You abused your position to settle a personal score. It is what it is. Live with it. Henry was right.
Oh.
Cheryl, double bourbon up.
What do you mean Henry was right? Can I have doers on the rocks, please? Henry was glib, that's all. Everything I used to hate. I mean, what does that even mean? I mean, Henry wouldn't even have a newspaper to work on if I hadn't saved it.
Henry doesn't have a newspaper to work on.
Oh, please. We're not, exactly the Washington Post, okay?
No, we're not. We run stupid headlines because we think they're funny.
Mm-hmm.
We run maimings on the front page because we got good art. And I spend 3 weeks bitching about my car because it sells papers. But at least it's the truth. As far as I can remember, we never, ever knowingly got a story wrong. Until tonight.
Granted, the guy is a lunatic in real life. He had some great moments as an actor, and I think that this is one of the best.
Agreed.
You love him in Independence Day, you love him in Quick Change, but this one, he just feels like a real person.
Yeah, although in Independence Day, the real person he feels like is Randy Quaid circa 2020.
I know.
So,
when did you get so paranoid?
When they started plotting against me.
So I touched upon the Sun's, I'm pretty sure he's the editor-in-chief. I don't know if they ever really say what his title is, but Bernie White. So here we go. Bernie White has a few problems. His daughter won't talk to him, his prostate is the size of a mango, and the newspaper he edits is a 24/7 shit show. You're looking at me funny, what?
a bagel?
Oh, I thought he said a mango.
No, a bagel.
All right. Every time I watched it, I heard mango.
Well, think about, which item of food would a prostate more likely resemble?
Yeah, pretty much. All right. Bernie White has a few problems. His daughter won't talk to him. His prostate is the size of it. Bagels can be different sizes, though. That's my problem with it. Even
This
if
was
he did
before
say
they
that.
had mini bagels. This was before Thomas's mini bagels.
Sure, or squiggles coming in different shapes, too.
Yeah. No,
That was
the
a
only
thing
reason,
in, like, 2000.
The only reason why I remember, that's like one of those lines that I have never forgotten since the first time seeing that movie, because then there's the callback later, and
That's true, there is, yeah.
Yeah, it was, oh, what's up his ass, bagel?
All right, Bernie White has a few problems. His daughter won't talk to him, his prostate is the size of a full-size bagel, and the newspaper he edits is a 24/7 shit show. Starting from the beginning, his adult daughter wants nothing to do with him because he was a terrible father, ruining his marriage by sleeping with a bunch of his reporters and simply never being around. Now that his health is failing, he feels major remorse and wants to make amends, so he tracks her down and finds out that she's married with a kid. In the paper, he's the editor-in-chief of the New York Sun, a tabloid newspaper that's known for over-the-top headlines and puff pieces about Ukrainian whale triplets. He doesn't have to do much there, aside from making sure that everyone does their jobs, mostly leaning on his managing editor, Alicia. He commiserates with a random guy at a bar with a familiar name, Sandusky. When he finally realizes who he is, it's too late. The brawl breaks out and Bernie hits the road. He ends up at his daughter's front steps, seeing her family through the window. When a newspaper is tossed at her front door, Bernie hides, but sees that she still subscribes to the Sun and doesn't seem to hate it. So, I don't love Robert Duvall. I thought he was great in general. I thought he was great in Falling Down.
Have you ever seen Tender? No, I think we talked about this on the Falling Down episode. Tender Mercies.
No, I haven't.
Okay.
I don't know. I just like his whole vibe. I just can't get down with most of the time. Okay, all right. I'll watch
Tender
it.
Mercies.
So, but I do really like him in this. His role in this makes a lot more sense. It's like he fits this role a lot better than I feel like a lot of other things that he's been in.
It's similar. It's like similar to Falling Down, where he's this career guy who neglects everything else.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
In this, I feel much more like he has made the conscious choice that when he had to choose between being a family man and being good at his job, he was like, you know what? If it makes me like, this is what I'm going to do. If it makes me shitty, then it makes me shitty. He seems to have accepted the fact he has accepted that, I guess, up to this point.
Right. Yeah, he feels a lot of remorse. I love the scene where he and Henry are out on the roof and Henry's kind of going to him for guidance, and he says that, I don't have the quote in front of me, but he says this thing about being a father figure. And I got to just like find it.
There's also so many interesting choices that Duvall makes with delivery, and he does these like physical things like in the middle of lines, and he'll stop like when he's talking about Henry's job interview.
Henry has an interview at the Sentinel.
Yeah.
He's kind of doing like a Pacino thing.
Yeah.
Oh, at the Sentinel. He does it a few times. He does it with the daughter. Does like the little like taps her head, and it's like, oh, that's a unique thing. There's a lot of things that it's like he's just kind of accepted, like, this is who I am. Like, he's smoking, he's chain smoking while he's coughing all over the place. Another one of those meeting moments is when he has that coughing fit and then just goes to Alicia. I get any on you.
Yeah, that cough, it just it makes you hurt, especially during COVID times right now. Oh boy. So the quote that he says when he's on the roof with Michael Keaton is, "The problem with being my age is everyone thinks you're a father figure, but you're really just the same asshole you always were." And I just love that, and he's acknowledging like, don't look to me for advice. I'm just a piece of shit.
It's so funny because it's such we were talking about the connection to Parenthood, and I feel like it's a companion line to the line that Keanu Reeves has,
the driver's
about
license,
being a father. Yeah.
Miss Buckman, you need a license to buy a dog or drive a car. Hell, you need a license to catch a fish. But they'll let any butt-reaming asshole be a father.
And not the same writers.
No, but clearly David Koepp was influenced, perhaps in a way. I don't know.
Yeah,
he's clearly a fan of Parenthood.
Yeah, and it's not like it's the same thing, but it has that same vibe, has that same feeling to it.
Yeah. I also kind of like how Bernie is, like I said, he kind of has his own things going on. Like his stories, he's there at the paper, he's running the meetings, he's drinking orange soda, but he's, his role with the actual production of the paper is pretty minimal. His stories are really focused on his personal life, and they're full stories. His health is failing, and he has a lot of remorse about how things went with his child. And he doesn't get his happy ending. But you learn all this stuff about him, and you, in a very short amount of time, get his you get the impression of him, from the full story. Mm-hmm. And it still fits, even though it's not directly about the all of the other plot lines. It's very own separate thing.
Although I don't entirely agree there. It's separate in terms of plot, but in terms of theme, you have Henry, who's on the verge of becoming a father, and who's also, Henry has that, is he making that same choice? Is he choosing to be, when he chooses work over family, is he making that same choice? And he sees what his future could be.
Yeah. But the thing is, it's not a overt connection. I mean, clearly, if you're thinking about it, yeah, definitely. And
it's a thematic connection.
There's just so much going on, and I feel like everything that's going on, it feels very complete. And it's not like this movie's 4 hours long where it takes time to like really go into these stories, but you get everything you need from them without feeling like you've been ripped off.
And to your point, they cover, because you have every type of, you've got, the page 6 editor who's making the who's banging who chart. You've got all of that, but you also have the sense of like, all right, well, what is it like starting in the business with Robin?
Yeah.
The nervous, who Glenn Close says she's 14 years old, which I feel like that's a bit of a joke, but
she's not 14.
Yeah. But just because you don't just see like, all right, these older reporters. I love that you've got the guy with the bad back who's complaining about his chair.
Oh, you mean Phil?
Phil, yeah.
Phil is a reporter at the New York Sun, a tabloid newspaper where he's treated like garbage. His colleagues blow cigarette smoke in his face, he's mocked relentlessly, and his chair is giving him a major back problem. He lobbies for a new $600 chair, which he eventually gets, but his colleagues prank him by swapping it with a shitty old stool. Go ahead, Dan. That's my last one.
Did you really have a synopsis for Phil?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's fantastic.
He's the only one who has like this mini like side story going on that comes back and it's part of their day in like this really bizarre way. But it's like, that's what would be really happening, is like all this stuff be going on and this one guy is just like, no, today is the day. I don't care what happens. I'm getting my chair.
The poignant shit.
I bought it. Why did she get the poignant shit? Bought the goddamn chair. This is the last straw, Henry, for Christ's sakes.
The last straw? What exactly were the previous straws?
Now it's your problem, Henry.
And it's one of those touches, and all of the aspects, from the desks that are just piles of file folders just overflowing, the cigarette smoke, the person who's like fixing like something in the ceiling while everything else is going on.
The AC isn't working. Like, yeah, this feels, it's an organism. It is a living, breathing place. It's not just a set.
But you also get the sense that like, it's not glamorized. And you also get the sense that, these people are working insane hours.
Yeah.
And like doing really like journalism, chasing down a story is difficult, is challenging. Yeah, and you have to do it fast.
And then when you go to the Sentinel office and you see this very organized, sanitized place where you don't really hear much aside from like phones ringing and like a soft like mutter of voices, and it's just like, it's such a different environment, and it's like Henry clearly doesn't belong there.
Right. Which I felt like that was a little, I thought that maybe the Sentinel might have been just slightly, I know it's supposed to be the New York Times.
Right.
I have to imagine that the New York Times offices would be a little more chaotic than that, but I get the point. I feel like it was extra sanitized and quiet and orderly to make that contrast. Whereas I don't feel like the Sun's newsroom is exaggerated that much, if at all.
Right. Yeah. And, while we're on the topic of the Sentinel, you have Spalding Gray, who's is he the managing editor there? I think he's something like that. I
believe so, yeah.
And I think that Henry's going for like assistant or like associate managing editor or something, which is...
Score went out for Spalding Gray.
I know, yeah. But he's so good. He's so good in this.
He's great.
And he's like polished. He's got like the bow tie, and he's just like, the vibe is so different from like even the people at the Sentinel to the people at the Sun.
Which is what makes it so funny when he's all pissed later at Henry and they're on the phone.
Paul, you are the most unethical, unprincipled, I cannot believe you had the balls to do it.
Slow down. Slow down. What are you talking about?
God damn, you know what I'm talking about, the Sedona item. Well, you stole it right off my desk. My ass. Come on, you know you stole it.
Well, hold on a second here, Paul. If we were working on a Sedona thing, how would you know about it? I mean, I hope the Sentinel doesn't have a mole over here.
Did you or did you not take the item?
Because, gee, if they did, they could get you in a lot of trouble for something like that. In fact, it might even be illegal. I'm not sure, but I can check on that for you if you want.
Come on, cut the bullshit.
You know what? Why don't I do this? Hold on a second. Janet! Henry? Get Dick Pallone in the DA's office for me, okay? Just tell him I want to ask him a question. Don't worry, I'm gonna keep you totally out of this. I just want to ask him a question, okay? I'll check on that for you, Paul.
Give it up, Henry. Give it up. Our guy saw McDougal banging on doors all over the Justice Department. Now, I'm going to ask you one last time. Did you or did you not take the item?
Well, Paul, you realized you were talking to a journalist.
Dick who?
I realize, this doesn't exactly get us off on the right foot.
The right foot? Are you out of your mind? Why, the office rescinded. How stupid do you think we are?
Paul, listen.
When I put 2 and 2 together, 3 and a half.
Hey, Paul, look, I'm trying to be reasonable here. If you just let me...
Why don't you just take my wallet as well, hey?
Let me say something. Wait a minute.
Well, I hope you're satisfied, asshole. You just blew your chance to cover the world.
Really? Well, guess fucking what? I don't really fucking care. You want to know fucking why? Because
I don't live in the world. I live in goddamn New York, or whatever he says.
New York City. So go fuck yourself.
Yeah, and it's so funny how even though Spalding Gray's character he's upset and he's angry and he's yelling, but he still can't help being that snide douche about like, we cover the world.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, and that's just not who Henry is.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is why Michael Keaton.
Oh my God. Michael Keaton's so good in this.
Look, I'm sure in, 93, 94, when they were making this, I'm sure there were other actors that might have been considered, but...
Well, I know that Kevin Costner was considered, Robin Williams was considered, Robin Williams, yes. I feel like could have, done a solid job with it. But it is hard to imagine anybody aside from Michael Keaton.
He's just, there's things that he does, just Michael Keaton.
Yeah.
That work for this character, like when he's trying to get Chuck, and get me, Chuck, and gets to that point where he just goes into that like almost Beetlejuicy voice.
Yeah, his energy is really fun and spastic, which you can attribute to the dozen or so Cokes that he drinks throughout the day, and he just works in that role, and I don't know, you can't take your eyes off him.
No, and. Yeah, he's such a great actor, I think, to be on screen with.
Right. And he and Marissa Tomei, who plays his wife, Marty, have such great chemistry.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I thought you were going to point out the Spider-Man connection.
Well, yeah, Spider-Man, the latest
Far From Home.
Iteration. Not Far From
Homecoming.
Home. He's in the first...
He's in Homecoming. Yeah, he was great.
Yeah, Homecoming. Right.
Yeah. It's interesting because the other... Sorry to tangent a little bit here, but it just occurred to me that it was also announced in the Ultimate Disney presser that Christian Bale was going to be joining the cast of the next Thor movie as the villain.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm thinking about how many former Batmen have moved on to play Marvel villains.
You know what? There's always a vacancy to be a new Marvel villain.
Paging Ben Affleck and George Clooney. Man, I wish Val Kilmer's health was better.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, we got Marissa Tomei, who's just excellent in this. I think that she's always great.
IMDb trivia.
Mm-hmm.
When Marissa Tomei is talking about the mob money that was lost, she suggests the joke article title, the joke headline, "Dumb Fellas." making fun of Goodfellas, which starred Joe Pesci, her co-star, and My Cousin Vinny.
Okay. That's
IMDb trivia.
Yeah. I am Dan Blathering.
No, come on, tell me. I was confused as to why that wasn't. As soon as she said that, I was like, is that in the trivia? Come on.
I don't know. That one's a bit of a departure. That one would have been an IMDb trivia because it is so mundane and kind of who cares.
Oh, exactly. Well, that's why I called them IMDb trivia, because it's just coincidence.
So, yeah, right.
Trivia.
Yeah, it's just like everybody's working at the time, so you're going to be in the same. You're going to be in
yes,
the
Dumbfellas, because Goodfellas was a really big movie a couple of years before this.
Yeah,
so it makes sense.
I also do they still do that where movies reference other recent movies? I feel like that's something that used to happen a lot more.
Well, outside of like this type of context?
Yeah, I feel like in the 90s, I can't come up with off the top of my head any other examples, but I remember watching something recently and there was a reference to another movie that had come out like that year, the year before, and it was like they're really referencing things that just came out, and I feel like that's something that you don't see a lot anymore. Or it might have been something from the 80s.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's in context here. And
yeah, but it's just interesting because it assumes that the movie that they're referencing is going to still work, decades later as a reference, that people are going to remember that was a movie that was out.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I guess by the time they started shooting this, if not by the time they started writing it, Goodfellas had already, been nominated for a ton of Oscars and won.
I'm not only referencing this as an example. There are plenty of others where, something references.
I can't think of.
Next time I notice it, I'll let you know.
Yeah, I mean
I've noticed it a few times.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking like outside of like parodies and spoofs.
Right. I mean, clearly people are going to be referencing movies like Jaws. Oh, you know what? There's a lot of Jaws things that come up like really soon after where it's like they parody that the score from that.
Airplane.
Right, but I'm not talking about parodies.
Oh no, well I didn't. It just made. All right, no. But wait, what did I have? Oh no, I just thought of a really good example of one. Shit, I lost it. It popped into my. Oh yeah, it's Knocked Up. In Knocked Up, which came out in summer of 2007. They referenced Spider-Man 3, which was out at the same time.
Oh, that's right. And they also talk about Munich, which was not too long before. So
yeah, it's a couple of years before. So that okay. So that's interesting. I guess the whole.
But that was still 2007. That was quite a long time ago.
Yeah,
I'm just saying, like nowadays, I don't really see that kind of thing happening much anymore. Anyway.
No. Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah, I mean, we also haven't talked about Jason Robards' character who just pops up for a scene. He's the owner of the paper. And, there's also this underlying plot line that's mostly with Alicia's story where it's like, the paper is always in jeopardy of folding completely. That's not to say literally a paper folding. I see how that could have been confusing. But, going under financially. And because of this ongoing threat, her job as managing editor is to, cut costs at any opportunity. And she's trying to convince Jason Robards' character to give her a promotion and, renegotiate her contract and give her a raise and stuff like that. And I don't know.
He doesn't have much tolerance for her.
No.
For her politicking.
But for the scene that he's there, he's great.
I love that line where she's like, I guess she's flirting with him a little bit.
Yeah.
And he tells her he's gay.
I'm gay.
I'm kidding.
I'm kidding. Yeah. He's just so good.
He's great. You referenced the character, but the mom from Home Alone. Mom from Home Alone. This.
Right. Well, now, what is it lately? People have been like, did you know that the mom from Schitt's Creek was the mom in Home Alone?
Oh, yeah. I know. Yeah.
It's absolute insanity. Yeah, Catherine O'Hara's been around for a long time.
Did you know that an actress who acts plays multiple characters?
Right. And she's so good in the one scene that she's in this. And also it's like, such a small role for somebody who's been in already like so many big, big
at this
movies,
point,
big
she
characters.
had already been the mom in Home Alone and Home Alone 2.
And Beetlejuice.
No, I know. And she had been she was in After Hours, we're talking like SCTV, 70s, 80s. So,
but she's so good in this as the friend of Marissa Tomei's who, is kind of like, oh, you're not going back to work. Your life is over. And drinking like the largest glass of wine.
Yeah.
Comically full glass of wine.
But a very real character.
Totally.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. I think that she's like coming in from the burbs or something to meet up in the city. And it's like, I think that she makes some sort of comment about not having been there for a while. Oh, just so good. Lig Thinpen as Janet. We've talked about her on the podcast before.
Yeah.
She's always just so good. So she's kind of is she the assistant, Henry's assistant maybe?
Yeah. I like her. I like Lynn Thigpen when she's likable. I think because the first thing I saw her in, or at least the first thing I really remember her from, was Lean on Me, where she's like the parent who wants to stop Morgan Freeman from making the schools better or whatever.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, Lynn Thigpen, fantastic, great. Like, she and Michael Keaton have this great rapport that
totally
great. It's very believable for two
very
people
believable.
who work together like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, this is such a great film. As we said, it's directed by Ron Howard, coming off of Far and Away, and, doing this like really simple, closed in, not epic movie. Of course, the next movie is Apollo 13, which is just like huge movie. But it's just so fascinating to me that, I don't know, this movie kind of exists like in kind of a interesting place in his career directing. And it's almost just like, this feels like, clearly he connects a lot with Apollo 13 and everything, but this feels like a more personal movie in a lot of ways. Obviously, Parenthood is a very personal movie too.
But also the issues. Oh, sorry. One more nice touch that I meant to bring up, that talking about kind of just the reality of that newsroom and being such a like just lived in, worked in place.
Yeah.
The Pop-Tarts in the freezer, in like the little staff break room, opens the freezer and there's a box of Pop-Tarts in the freezer. And I just thought, wow, what an amazing touch.
That's a nice touch.
That like you're making sure those Pop-Tarts stay fresh. So
that's awesome. I did not notice that.
Oh.
Well, there's also like the Coke vending machine that's broken or out of Cokes, and he has to go to the other one and he's out of coins. So they, his assistant has a little collection for him of quarters to get more Cokes. So,
yeah. And anyone who remembers vending machines pre, Apple Pay and cards
credit
and all
cards,
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Has been in that position where you've tried to scrounge up some change to get something. But also in talking about all the wonderful character work and, the world that's established here, there's also a really strong theme and a really strong moral question throughout the film. And what I love about it is, the script does this so well, is it plants the seed that this failing tabloid newspaper that might be trying to get taken a little bit more seriously missed the boat on this big story, and Henry doesn't want to miss the boat again.
All right, so page 1, Subway sounds like I would, right?
Yeah.
You got great art.
Yeah, I think it's definitely.
I don't think so. TV is going to be all over it. They already are. It's a minor derailment, first of all. And Carmen has got great day 2 stuff on the Williamsburg murder. If they make a bust, we have to follow up on that.
The Subway's a major story.
Nobody died.
Bullshit.
Somebody got maimed.
Yeah, that helps.
Minor derailment.
All I'm saying is people got maimed, and we have pictures of it.
God damn it. So we fucked up yesterday. What do you want to tuck our tail between our legs and just take it for? Do what everybody else does. Let's stand alone. Let's make up for it.
We're a commuter paper. People want the subway.
What are you, market research all of a sudden? Not everything is about money.
It is when you almost fold every 6 months.
Bullshit.
Yeah.
So you have that motivation. And then on top of that, the fact that you have this murder, these two innocent kids, really,
Right.
I think they're like 19 or 19 and 20 are arrested. And I forget which character says it, but they make the point as, you know, it doesn't matter if they rescind the story the next day. If gotcha with these two kids on the front is the headline, then that's what it's going to be for everybody who sees it.
Great, fine. Good. It's a great lead. We'll follow it up tomorrow, but without a confirmation, we still run gotcha.
Boy, what if these aren't the guys? What if they're innocent?
We taint them today, we make them look good on Saturday. Everybody's happy.
Makes sense to me. Hey, wait a minute. This is a story that could permanently alter the public's perception of two teenagers who might be innocent, and as a weekend bonus, ignite another race war. How about that? What do you say we think about this?
We got that.
And it brings me back, it makes me think of, you know, Central Park 5, which, by the way, the cop, that's the cop that McDougal, that they corner, was actually one of the cops from the Central Park 5 case who's actually believes that they were guilty.
Right.
So you've got the power of the press and the ability of the press to scaremonger. And that you see even in the shots of the television news when they're interviewing people at the airport.
Yeah.
Like the guy talking about his brother canceled.
My brother canceled his trip. Yeah.
Yeah. So
totally. Yeah.
The scaremongering and race baiting, everything that we see now, and it's more obvious to me, and I don't know if that's because it's just more out in the open to everybody, or if it's because I'm older and have, you know, and have studied this and understand media better than I did when I was 17.
Yeah.
So to see it all in there. Oh, and by the way, shout out to the line, Donald Trump jumped off a building and landed right on Madonna.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It's always so interesting when he comes up in movies in like small lines. Like I was watching The Devil's Advocate recently, and there was like a quick mention of him, not to mention the fact that also his apartment was used as the apartment for the rich guy, like the real estate developer who killed his family or whatever. Anyway.
And I feel like maybe Kushner owns the building, because isn't it like 666?
Oh, I don't remember.
Like Madison Avenue for that, because
probably
like, Kushner owns that building.
Oh, yeah. So
like, you can't make this shit up.
Yeah, but you know, going back to what you were saying, they really did a respectful job showing, like, telling that story of these, you know, innocent black teens who just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and they were seen at the site where these guys had been murdered. There was nothing pointing them to have possibly done it. There were no fingerprints on the gun. There almost were. The kid almost touched the gun, but didn't. But yeah, they just came across this. And I think that it's also mentioned how there was a shooting of just a black kid in the neighborhood like 2 weeks before that.
Yeah.
So the mob staged this there to pin it on just any other black kid who happened to be there. So
yeah,
and almost got away with it had it not been for the talents at the Sun.
Yeah, no, but you're right. It's among everything else in this movie. I mean, that's the skill of this film, is the fact that there are so many things going on. There are so many characters, and each having their own lives, their own stories. And yet there are also these other things going on, these other plots, these other ideas that have meaning. and that have importance. And that's why I'm just so with you on that. Like, yeah, I could probably watch this movie once a year and
totally
just get sucked into it every time.
Yeah. Yeah. And one thing that we didn't even mention is that it takes place from 7 a.m. to 7 a.m. You know, it's a complete 24 hours. And
which the actual IMDb trivia pointed out that Imagine Entertainment produced 24, the show 24.
Oh, God. Not interesting. Who cares? Anyway. Yeah. So in talking about the excitement of watching a movie that takes place in such a newsroom, there were a couple of other movies that I watched that I feel like are like spiritually related to the paper. I watched Broadcast News, which had come out a few years earlier, which takes place in a small TV station, which, you know, Holly Hunter, Albert Brooks. It's just, yeah.
Joan Cusack is brilliant.
Joan Cusack is great. It's a really great movie. And I feel like it kind of has you get a similar feeling from watching it than you do when you're, you know, watching the paper. I highly recommend rewatching that if you haven't seen it in a while, or watching it if you've never seen it. And
I've seen it before. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure you've seen it.
Yeah, no, but I would probably just like thinking about it. I'm like, I could watch Broadcast News.
It has always been considered an outlaw nation.
But strangely, some of those who have interviewed Gaddafi find him, in a phrase we like to use in this country, very presidential.
Nice, Jane.
New James, hold just a minute. Then we're going to go to Martin Klein at State for the message from Libya. Then you're going to have the carrier pilot from the Sidra in time to... What? No! You missed him! We only have 10 minutes left. How can you talk to me about parking problems? No! Not you'll try. You'll do it! Do it! Or I'll fry your fat ass, Estelle. Goodbye!
I had no idea she was this good.
Tom.
Give him some more headroom.
Tom. Phil for a second.
Tom? The latest message seems to indicate that the Libyan pilot was acting on his own without authority from anyone else.
Stand by camera 2.
In other words, I think we're all okay.
Okay, Tom, wrap it up.
Who the hell cares what you think?
The Libyan government has disavowed any prior knowledge of the attack. I'm Tom Grunick, reporting from Washington. Good afternoon.
Animation.
Thanks, everybody.
We are out.
Another one that I watched, which is a movie that I remember when I watched it the first time, I was like, this movie's great. And as we know, everybody else agreed. And I thought to myself, I just don't know if I'll ever watch it again. Spotlight. And, you know, we're talking about a movie where Michael Keaton plays, you know, he's the editor for the Spotlight section, but he was the Metro editor at the paper at the Boston Globe, you know, in his past. So I feel like it is a spiritual relative of the paper, you know, and man, what a movie. We don't have to get into that, but like.
Yeah, that I don't know
so
if I'll
good.
be rewatching that one, but I saw it in the theater and.
Me too.
Yeah. A powerful film. Very powerful.
We just want to know if it's possible that the president, the faculty, the board, that no one knew what was going on at the time.
I graduated in 1979, and I had no idea about any of this. So if you're suggesting that Father Gibbons and Father Callahan had in any way...
Gibbons and Callahan, I mean, they ran this place like the Navy. You really think they didn't know?
It's a big school, Robbie. You know that. And we're talking about 7 alleged victims over, what, 8 years?
We're talking about, 7 that we know about.
This is ridiculous. You're reaching for a story
Jack,
here.
Jack. If I had been president then, I would have known.
Bill, I'm not sure that's relevant.
Why do you think they sent Talbot up to Chevrolet? You know they wanted him out of town.
Robbie, as well-intentioned as Bill's remarks are, I'm hoping we can keep this between us until we all get on the same page.
Is that why we're here, to get on the same page?
No, we're here because you're an important alumnus, Robbie, and a friend.
Exactly. And we know you care about the school as much as we do.
Did you play a sport here, Jack?
Yeah, football. Why?
I ran track. You know, I went to Providence yesterday. I talked to one of Father Talbot's victims. He played hockey here. And he was one of the better ones. He's got a wife, kids, good job. About 10 minutes into the conversation, guy breaks down. You know, couldn't stop crying. Said he could never figure out why Father Talbot picked him. Father Talbot coached the hockey team. So, I guess we just got lucky. You know me.
Well deserving of all of the accolades. That's all I gotta say.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I don't know. So, Dan, what would you do with the paper if you were forced to bring it back in some way?
It's a tough question because I think there's a lot of options that could work. And if you're doing, let's say, if you're remaking it, well, you've got a whole different news environment to work with. In thinking of a remake, though, I kept kind of hitting the same wall where I was like, well, Newsroom, did the Aaron Sorkin series, you know, kind of like covered that, like, you know, journalism in the 21st century.
Sure.
So
yeah.
I think I would still, but I think if I was going to see a remake of it, I would keep it at a print newspaper, but add that to the pressures, the financial pressures, is that just not just, oh, people aren't reading our paper, but just that people aren't buying papers.
Yeah, which comes up in Spotlight.
Yeah, exactly.
That's, you know, takes place in 2000, 2001, probably through 2003. And, you know, it's really at this time where the internet is taking away their funding from the classifieds and, you know, things like that. They just don't get the money that they used to.
So I was thinking about that and just thinking like, all right, a lot. But I was also thinking that like, well, a remake of the paper would probably just blend in and would not, I don't know, not really do anything. It would probably be something that would even end up on like Netflix. I don't think it would have that the same. I don't think there's a good enough reason to remake it. Whereas making a sequel would allow you to show that and show, okay, well, let's say Henry is the editor-in-chief now. Maybe it's the son, maybe it's not the son, because, you know, there's a good chance the son wouldn't exist anymore or that it would have been absorbed into another paper. Henry is working, you know.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Henry's child.
Oh,
as the son, the S-O-N.
Well, we would find out what happens with him because he would be, you know, I guess, you know, approaching 30.
Yeah.
And you have a lot of options. I mean, God, like depending on when you set this, you know, if you're covering 2015 to 2020, working in journalism is just like being in the middle of a cyclone 24/7.
Yeah.
So I don't know exactly what the story is because I don't know that you necessarily like, clearly you could kind of have a similar story going on about, you know, black men being framed for something or being accused of something and having Henry like reconcile it. But the thing is, if you're setting this in whatever, 2020 to 2025, you know, he's already reconciled that. He's already come back to that several times.
Right.
So
for sure. Unfortunately, it's an evergreen topic.
Unfortunately, yeah, it is. And but I also think that that means it also wouldn't need to be the focus of a sequel. I think a sequel could see really maybe it's that the paper is going out of business. And maybe what we're seeing in the sequel is what happens to a staff of journalists who have been doing this for such a long time. And, you know, you've still got Michael Keaton, Marissa Tomei, Glenn Close, if she's still there. I mean, Duvall, with that cough, I don't think Duvall made it.
Yeah,
Duvall.
Yeah, Bernie's gone.
I don't think Bernie, you know, made it. And I don't think we're bringing back Randy Quaid either. So But it would be, I think, like writing off McDougal would just be like, I don't know, no one's seen McDougal since '96 when he just I flew off into the sky after the spaceship. But I think a sequel bringing back a lot of these characters. Who knows? Maybe Robin is
she's the
photo editor
now.
Yeah, no, maybe she's like, you know, yeah. Or she's the online editor. She managed something like that, you know, bring back. I was thinking watching her, I was like, oh, she almost looks like a young Amanda Plummer.
She does.
Yeah.
Absolutely does.
So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe you get Amanda Plummer to play Robin. Who knows? But you could bring, you know, there's a lot of people that you can bring back, but also bringing in new characters. I don't want to be stereotypical with, like, you know, the young character who's always talking about tweeting and online presence, and like Ben Schwartz's character on Space Force.
Oh my God, it's so good.
So, like, yeah, I wouldn't like, that just seems so stereotypical to be like, oh, these kids and their electronic devices and they're taking over everything.
No,
I would rather really just see, like, what does a newspaper do when they know they're not going to be continuing to report the news, and how do you keep, because you can't just, like,
maybe it's about the last edition, you know, putting out the last edition of the
maybe
Sun.
It's that 24 hours. It's the last, you know, 7 p.m. to 7, and maybe that 7 a.m. is, you know, that's the beginning of retirement, and we could end it almost in that same way, except for maybe not in a hospital bed, but just like, you know, it's Michael Keaton and Marissa Tomei, and the sun's coming up, and wow, I don't have to go to work today. Yeah,
and everyone's wondering how Marissa Tomei looks better now than she did then somehow. So
yeah, I don't. It's like Marissa Tomei, and I was gonna say this about Walter Matthau when we watched Grumpy Old Men, but like, how is it that they've aged maybe 5 years in 20? Because Walter Matthau Grumpy Old Men and Walter Matthau Bad News Bears, look about 5 years difference,
pretty much. Yeah,
Marissa Tomei, The Paper, and Marissa Tomei, I get, like, The Paper too.
Spider-Man.
Yes, Spider-Man. I mean, oh God, she's so good. I just started going off on a mental tangent of all of the amazing Marissa Tomei performances that I could think
She's
of.
great.
Yeah. What would you do?
I would go down a very different path. So there are two different ways that I could see this happening. I could see it as a prequel where Henry and Alicia are maybe in school for journalism together, and they are like partners, and they're like, and something divides them, which is, you know, really leading up to what's going on in the paper. But I think that what I would really love to see, and what I was really feeling while I was watching it, is just a stage adaptation. You know, this could work so well on stage. The set pieces are awesome. They don't have to be as elaborate as they are in the movie, but I think that it would work really well on stage. I mean, you direct for the stage, so maybe you'd have a difference of opinion there, but I don't know. I could just totally see it working, because this is it's a character piece. And, you know, there's just like wall to wall dialogue, and I don't know. That's the fun part to watch. And that's where a lot of the good stuff comes out.
It would be a lot of fun on stage, not as a musical.
Not as a musical.
I assume you mean not as a musical. Yeah.
Not as a musical, just stage play. Yeah. I was even thinking, like, when they're down in like the press room and there's all the paper machinery, it's like a projection could be, you know, a cool way of doing that, you know, that evokes that feeling.
Oh, you would use a lot of projection, because you'd have to show, like, you'd be opening with all just projections of all of the different newspaper covers that print. So like this, is how I would start it, is like just either with a screen or curtain on stage, and have the projections of all the other newspapers getting it. And then the last one that comes up dead spot in the middle is the Sun with like parking tickets.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, you would definitely need to scale it down and do some character consolidation. I don't know if Phil would make it to the stage
why
version.
not?
Well, either that or Phil's character would have to be combined, would have to be, to use a term from Parenthood, an amalgam of like the Clint Howard, Jeffrey Owens. How much?
Right, but you also need the other people who are at the same level as Phil to kind of doing like pranks on him and stuff. And I don't know. I think that you could totally have a Phil that's separate from
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's certain things that you would need to do, but and adjust, but it could,
totally.
I think it could work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of some of the sequences.
Yeah.
God, the interview at the Sentinel, that would be.
Oh my God, that'd be awesome.
That would be great. Or I guess, you know what you would do is you'd have like actors doubling. So like the actor that plays Clint Howard's character would play the Spalding Gray character.
Yeah, but it couldn't be somebody as recognizably Clint Howard-y as Clint Howard.
Well, no, I'm assuming Clint Howard is not going to come back to
no,
the
but I'm saying
play.
Clint Howard-y, somebody who has such a specific look.
Yeah. No. Yeah. It would be much less Clint Howard-y person.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think that we've got some good ideas cooking. And, for such a perfect movie, and this is one where a lot of people would probably say like, nope, don't touch it. But
I mean, I've felt this isn't the first time where I've thought about this movie and thought, a sequel to this could work.
Sure.
But a prequel could also work. I mean,
you could focus on Robert Duvall's character in a prequel. There are so many stories that you can really get into.
If Disney was to buy this property, Disney could just make separate series and movies about all the characters.
The McDougal Files.
Like with Star Wars. Yeah. The McDougal Files, like, Bernie's Brood.
Yeah. It would just be Bernie, the paper story.
Yeah. So there's
you
a lot
could do
of
a whole prequel on Catherine O'Hara's character, Susan.
You could. And by the way, let's point out, because I think like running time of movies is something that like it's a thing. I feel like more like the last 10 years, I feel like movies have gotten to be a little too long. Like they're just a little overindulgent, and The Paper, for all of its characters and all of its plot lines,
it's tight,
and stories, comes in like there is not a moment wasted.
You even get a full story on Sandusky. You really get his character and everything about him in his like brief interactions with Robert Duvall, and then when he's just saying like, these problems were there before I started. And McDougal's just like, well, you're the guy that's there now when we're doing the story. So sorry. And, you get him. You understand this guy.
You get his perspective. You get Sandusky's
you don't even
perspective
see until the end. Yeah.
No, you hear about him the whole time.
You hear about him. That's for sure. But
yeah,
it's great.
Great reveal.
So Dan, why don't we tell everybody this is episode 94. We're talking about 1994's The Paper. Next episode is episode 95. What movie from 1995 are we going to be talking about?
Oh, wow. Well, when it comes to 1995, what other movie would we be talking about other than Waterworld?
Oh, man. As you just mentioned it, I'm thinking of things that even already exist that are keeping this property alive. But this is definitely one of those like weird cult classics that's, popular for the weirdest reasons. And
there are people who love it.
And I have a fun personal story having to do with actually I have two personal stories having to do with Waterworld.
Oh, okay.
We'll get to that. That's what we call a little cliffhanger, a little, dangling the banana for the monkey. That's a thing people say, right?
I usually do carrot on a stick, No,
I'm going for banana for the monkey.
The banana for the monkey? All right.
So, Dan, while you are chasing down your car that's being towed, I wish you a good journey.
Good journey.